Uh, Now recognize Mr. Dold for 5 minutes
Thank you, Madam
from
Chairman.
Illinois.
We're delighted that you're here from Illinois. Obviously, the chairman, or the chairwoman, ranking member, and myself, we're delighted to have another person from Illinois here on the panel. So
Thank you
so
very much for the invitation.
Ms. Brown, in the past, you've noticed that Congress has noted that repetitive lost properties constituted a significant drain on the NFIP. Do you have any suggestions on the repetitive lost properties and how to make them less of a liability?
Yes, this is also an issue that we've looked at over time. And while great strides were made with amendments that were made in the 2000s to address repetitive lost properties, the number of properties has continued to increase. And we looked at February numbers, and they are continuing to increase. There are a couple of things that we would propose be considered that deals with mitigation offers and what happens when those offers are refused or not responded to, in terms of allowing FEMA perhaps to apply a surcharge above a full risk rate for those properties if the homeowner chooses to refuse or not respond to an offer. And also really focusing some attention on the mitigation programs and determining if there are ways to make them more efficient and effective as a way to address the issue of the repetitive lost properties.
And just following up on my colleague on the other side who had talked about reinsurance, you currently aren't using reinsurance right now. Is that correct? I mean, I'm sorry.
FEMA, no.
They're not using. Is there any question that that FEMA is able to use it?
That I'm not sure about. If they could, if they wanted to. Right now, the mechanism is for for them to rely on borrowings from Treasury.
I mean, would perhaps additional insight or authority from Congress be necessary to let them do that? It's certainly a common practice out there in the insurance industry in order to try to protect from catastrophic losses. And certainly when we look at those areas that are particularly hard hit or those that continually to be hit again and again, it would seem to me that potentially at least having that mechanism or vehicle available may be something that they might want. Is that something, I mean, what is your take?
Well, my take on whether they could do it now, this is where I really wish Mr. Fugate was here to address that question specifically. But in terms of that being an option to be considered, I think that's definitely one of the options that needs to be on the table and discussed in terms of reforming the program going forward.
Okay. And Ms. McConkey, a question for you on the vouchers. You had talked a little bit about vouchers before. Can you give me any sort of an idea on how you anticipate or how you would like to see something like this, how it would be administered? And do you have any idea what the cost of that would be?
To answer your last question first, no, that's actually the cost of it is a study that we recommend be initiated through this draft legislation. The voucher system we envision as something to be managed through the Housing and Urban Development because they have experience with means-tested voucher systems. FEMA does not. But this way it would allow for people to get the message about the risk that they have with their home and yet not be burdened in these times, or because families that really are just operating on the edge would not be burdened with the cost, that we would pick that cost up. It also provides them with fuller protection than no insurance at all. If you have insurance, then that means you've got money to pay off your mortgage. But if you are relying on disaster assistance, you are still obligated for that mortgage. You really aren't covered. So it really provides lower income people with greater coverage. The voucher system, as we said, we believe it should be means tested. And that's the extent of my knowledge on that. We would have to do some more research to give you a more thorough answer.
Okay. And with just the short amount of time that I've got left, you talked in your testimony before about, or at least in testimony in past, about floodplain coverage, going from the 100-year to potentially expanding it beyond that in terms of 250 or even a 500-year event. Do you have any idea how much of the country would be covered under those instances?
that's something that I don't know that anybody could just estimate that without some research on it. Going beyond the 100-year, looking at the 500-year would be something to consider as a residual risk area. Probably you could estimate the amount of the difference between the 100 and 500-year floodplain acreage based on current FEMA mapping. If it was all digital, you might be able to get some estimates.
The gentleman's time has expired. Ms. Capito, do you have